I'm trying to just think of ways on how to get people to think of like, it's not a stretch that Kohberger could be this adjacent federal behavioral asset. It's exactly what he's studying. He's a PhD in criminology and behavioral profiling. He's surveying ex-cons. How did they commit crimes? He's applying for internships with law enforcement agencies. He's driving around late at night on routes that are used for trafficking. That completely aligns with like these DOJ and DHS funded campus programs. Exactly what the NIJ gave a bunch of funding for. The odds of the roommates and then the narrative shielding, wild. The odds of no murder weapon, no sheath, only trace DNA, no connection. Those are just equally wild. And then you combine them. Now, what do the odds of that go to? Doesn't it just seem odd that this is apparently over with? Brian Kohberger is having photos and videos of him leaked in prison. His complaints are being leaked. They're still slowly releasing evidence. They're fighting the release of evidence. This man has been arrested for how long? It's all so weird that we can't gaslight ourselves into thinking that this is a normal case anymore, guys.
And here we go.
Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
Now that we're asking questions, you want us to believe that we are the problem? Really? And you want us to just forget about all that like naive fools? We just have to not see what is clearly happening with the slow drip of information. In a weird way, it's like a little self-confidence pat on the back for all of us that maybe have questioned this Idaho 4 case in the past. Like, see, we're not crazy. While this was probably planned the entire time to be slowly dripped out and leaked out like this. Slow enough for us to dive in to every little thing, cause confusion, look into things that probably aren't relevant. Then they can discredit us by saying, look at these idiots. Look at what they're trying to say this is about. Before we dive into it, let me just plug the channel. All my streams are free. There's 0 paywalls associated with my channel. I have one channel. Everything is Birdie_Hive Mind. Anything else is not me. I've been making it a point to do this the last few streams. It takes 5 seconds. You just got to swipe down on the chat, press the like button. We got merch still up on birdiebombshell.com. We got the MSNPC t-shirts, tinfoil hats, and Hive Mind hoodies. We are in the process of redoing them. I just got this one actually in the mail today. This is the black embroidered Hive Mind hoodie, super soft. Real quick. So Puppeteer said this. I'll make this a little bit bigger. When I was watching the Dateline series, I did not notice this. And now I swear to God, every picture has this arc. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, her hand probably hit her hair. I've also seen this theory on how this looks like somebody's face was cropped out right there because you can almost see a middle part at the top of it. You kind of see like right up here, it kind of looks faded. Like if you've ever used an eraser tool. I'll actually just show people this real quick. Like that took what? 2 seconds, guys? It's weird too, because it keeps what's behind them pretty close to what it should be. I got to slow my brain down. Got the ADD squirrel with my thoughts going on. You have to wonder every single time that narrative was reinforced, whether it be from day one all the way through the 911s being released, then leading right up to the plea deal, that narrative stayed pretty close. Then the plea happened. Now it's strategy talk, it's defense attorneys, it's other attorneys talking about why he's effed. But I think that a plea is just a long-term legal play in a legitimate case. It's a long-term legal play. Where does this go next? Because Brian missed his window to change his plea. Now it's dependent on post-conviction relief. They're releasing more information slowly, but doesn't it just seem odd that this is apparently over with? Nothing is going on a standard plan. So why? Why would that be? Isn't that a little bit weird? None of them have answers. I'm not asking this to be just a facetious douchebag up here. I'm really not. I'm trying to figure this out with you. Why don't we know? I find it really, really hard to believe that this is just such bad misconduct happening in the public eye at the highest level. I know it happens. I can wrap my head around that corruption happens. But every step and stage and phase along the way, nothing has changed. It's gotten worse. Now, if you have not seen this video, so that's True Crime Design. That's her channel. I'm sure most people in here are aware of her. If you're not, that's the thumbnail, Family of Feds. What TCD essentially summarized is that Maddie Mogen's, and please go watch this. So I can tell you right now, this 1-2 sentences does not even scratch the surface of it. But essentially, Maddie Mogen's genealogy reveals a cousin whose troubled past and time in Ukraine during the 2014 revolution suggest possible ties to U.S. intelligence operations. All those questions that I just asked everybody. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? What's going on with this? And I say I find it hard to believe that it's just that shoddy of an investigation due to either incompetence or local corruption. Now, it seems like that only gets done with very, very powerful people. Like more powerful than just you have a bunch of money and you can have some local person at the courthouse redact things. I'm talking like this is going to go. I know that this case has to go deep already. Nothing, if it doesn't have some link to an intelligence operation, whether that be the Pacific Northwest Highway and all the laundering. Thank you, Drew. Drew said, "Happy Sunday, birds. Go Pack, go. Free BK. Remember when Dylan waited 8 hours to call 911? Birdie. Happy Sunday, boss. Tip your host, you peasants." David Loach and Hunter Chapin. No, I don't know if True Crime Design ever tunes into the lives. I did leave a comment and I said, "This is a great video. Love that you're going this direction." She's like, "I thought that the Hive would like this." So I don't know if she's in here, but I know there's a lot of people that appreciate her style. I think it's cool. She's not, afraid to lean into that stuff. And Germilia says, "And if you don't think that the agencies lie and kill, you're wrong." Sherlock says, "There's no such thing as ex-CIA or retired CIA. That's not an effing thing. It's all in the family, bruh." Thank you so much, CK. Says, "Just a peasant here, tipping my host. Thanks, Birdie. The Hive is the best." No, you're the best, CK. Thank you so much, Jay-Z. As I was saying, I geek out learning about this stuff. I love learning about things in the past that have happened that you see it and you think one thing, and then you start to learn about, whoa, behind the scenes, that was going on. That makes way more sense behind the scenes that this happened because that was happening where nobody was watching. Are there federally protected networks? In this context, a federally protected network refers to an organization or an entity that's shielded by federal law, meaning that crimes committed against it or its members are prosecuted at the federal level rather than just the state level. Departments like the FBI, the IRS, the DEA, the ATF, and USPS, Secret Service, TSA, crimes against their personnel, buildings, or operations being a key word, they're all federal crimes under Title 18. But I say all that because now, knowing what we know about the roommate's behavior, is that just as weird as what they're saying Brian Kohberger did? So for some reason, this clicked when I watched True Crime Design's video. The roommate's behavior is just as weird as what they say Brian Kohberger did. The odds of the roommates and then the narrative shielding, wild. The odds of no murder weapon, no sheath, only trace DNA, no connection. Okay, those are just equally wild. And then you combine them. Now, what do the odds of that go to? Whether you think one is weirder than the other, right? But they're both extremely weird. And it's even the craziest part is when you combine those odds. I'm saying this because is it a stretch to think that those two events had to be that way? They had to be that way with the lack of detail and with the lack of transparency that they provided, meaning in the investigation. They had to be that way. If they provided anything else, guys, think about it. If they provided anything else, I don't believe that we would even be here discussing this case. Now I want to talk about Brian Kohberger and what they say he did after the crime, where he was during the crime. And his alibi was he would like to drive around and be outside a lot. I also think that there's a really good chance that Brian has been some sort of informant or asset if this is an ongoing operation into what's going on that highway. So my question is this. Brian likes to drive around a lot at night. Well, that's probably true. This cover story of who Brian Kohberger is, what he likes to do, all of this fits perfectly into this narrative, again, for it to go exactly the way they're telling us it's gone. Well, I do wonder if that route that Brian Kohberger, they say, took when leaving the residence, how he drove all the way down and around, and he took the long way back home. I started thinking, like, why would they make that a point to, really make that his route when the footage and all that comes out? We've been able to pick that apart. What we're seeing on Linda Lane, the dumpster footage, the car park, all the other footage that we've seen, it's like, what? Blurry photos of stuff. Well, here's what I started to wonder. they're following him across state lines as well. Is the route that Brian Kohberger took a very highly traveled route? That if on the Pacific Northwest Highway, that's one trafficking corridor, is the route that Brian took to go home, where they tracked him across state lines, pulled him over twice, is that route the way that somebody who's a mule or smuggling would also go? I ask that because I'm starting to wonder if the alibi of Brian Kohberger driving around at night was a long-term play in an alibi, a pre-planned play in an alibi, because they're going to use a digital dragnet. If they know that it's not Brian Kohberger, and if we had a guy on the inside that is doing some sort of surveillance or data tracking, predictive criminal behavior, exactly what the NIJ had been funding to WSU, to that criminology department that Kohberger just so happened to be in, wouldn't it make sense to have that dude driving around at night? And then if they were going to frame him for the crime, well, now, guys, it's genius. They don't need to go and get warrants or anything for these organizations they're investigating. Not nearly as much as if you say there's a suspect that's from Moscow, Idaho, in the Idaho 4, and he's going to drive this route that just runs parallel to the Pacific Northwest Highway and then head across the country. Then they're able to do a digital dragnet. Well, guys, they're able to see a lot of other information besides just Brian Kohberger's. And Sherlock saying once they deleted his AT&T alibi, he was effed. Well, maybe that was, again, strategic, because it would be like, what is this guy doing? He's driving everywhere. He's driving these well-known mule path, like these mule highways. He's driving around late at night. So I'm trying to think different. As you guys know, that's the whole tagline that, I say I'm like, thinking different hits different. It's the purpose of this channel. Court also just brought up a good point, saying that Steve G did say BK would work for the government in prison using his degree. Mindy says anything's possible except their shitty narrative. Top dog for you, Mindy. I just want to do a little bit of a temperature check there. Do you guys get what I'm saying? From, if you think about it in a different light, the alibi of driving around late at night, is that just like a cover story for the surveillance? Did he travel and did he decide to drive home with his father to do this digital dragnet across that entrance into the rest of the country using a very popular highway? You have the college town of Moscow and Pullman. Okay. Those sit on low surveillance and low traffic corridors, which, as we know, are ideal for trafficking, staging, any kind of money laundering. Could be a good recruitment area for lookouts or mules with younger kids, younger people maybe in college, or who knows. But these are close to the US 95 corridor. That connects to Nevada and Canada. Those are sitting between these large cities of Seattle, Boise, and Salt Lake. That makes Moscow and Pullman this quiet middle area. It's a place where nobody is looking, but everything and everyone has to pass through there. I then go and I start thinking about, again, Steve G's interview. He's like, it's time to put Idaho on the map. Is that because nobody knows how rampant this is as a staging area to be dispersed to those other larger hubs, being Seattle, Boise, and Salt Lake? The quiet middle. It's the quiet middle. And if Kohberger's driving around that quiet middle all the time as his alibi, they can go back and they can digitally dragnet his ass for God knows how long they were able to go back and look at his patterns. Okay, those are very consistent with mule highways. So is he surveilling these routes? Is he a part of some sort of behavioral program tracking? Like, how do traffickers move this? How do traffickers move these? Is that what Brian is studying? It's still behavior profiling. Is it not? I think it is. I mean, I'm not trying to ask that sarcastically. I'm like, in my mind, I do think that is still behavior profiling. You can profile the behavior of organizations. They don't just have to be these people. It plays perfectly into the loner narrative. I'm trying to just think of ways on how to get people to think of, like, it's not a stretch that Kohberger could be this adjacent federal behavioral asset. It's exactly what he's studying. He's a PhD in criminology and behavioral profiling. He's surveying ex-cons. How did they commit crimes? He's applying for internships with law enforcement agencies. He's driving around late at night on routes that are used for trafficking. That completely aligns with, like, these DOJ and DHS funded campus programs. Exactly what the NIJ gave a bunch of funding for. I think Kohberger fits the exact mold of this, like, controlled observer. Now I want to go back to the roommates and their legal maneuvers. Okay, so we just talked about their behavior. Now let's talk about the roommates' legal maneuvers. Does their behavior when it comes to the legal system, does that suggest knowledge, or does that tip the scale towards some sort of broader operation? Well, let's start with Bethany. This is the obvious one. She goes to Nevada, she's subpoenaed, and then she's fighting it in court to avoid testifying. Now, then you have Dylan Mortensen, who physically saw the suspect, never testified, never really appeared in public. I guess never was given a chance to testify in a real trial. I mean, never appeared in public and was immediately shielded. You guys understand how uncommon that is in a murder trial, right? Given the narrative, that wouldn't be happening. It just seems to me like if you're fighting a subpoena and then give it again, just you saw the suspect, you're not appearing publicly, you never had to testify, be cross-examined. Is that because you could expose these overlapping operations that are ongoing? Could you expose informants? Even if it's not Brian, is that what could be happening? Are there some sort of protected individuals that you could expose during this? Perfect Harmony says, I'm definitely becoming a new subscriber tonight. I really appreciate the freedom to think openly and pose questions among like-minded people. Amen to that. That, like I said, guys, that's been the goal of starting the Hive the entire time. So, Perfect Harmony, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Latte says, it has the hallmarks of intelligence, destroy the crime scene. And that too. Destroy the crime scene, sloppy investigation, say nothing to the public that makes any sense. Well said. And then have a lone wolf actor. And don't sway on your narrative. It's seal and redact everything. It's shame anybody who questions it. Heather, thank you for making this point, except for the fact that Trump made a public statement, so things aren't fitting. It's so hard that it's a president that's, I don't know, people you either love or you hate Donald Trump, whatever it is. But my whole point about this is like, it's a president talking about, again, according to the narrative, it's one of the most straightforward cases. I feel like the only way that happens, that would happen is like he's briefed on it by somebody, but being briefed on it and then putting out a statement in the manner that he did, saying, oh, there's nothing, he should have to talk, he should have to do this. Like, again, I don't know how all that works with briefings and I've seen videos of, somebody like sitting right next to him typing out his tweets as he just talks. Who knows? But what I'm saying is the bigger picture of like, it's a little bit weird that a president's talking about this local homicide that's just a stabbing. And actually talking about the court system, and he should have to say this. That's weird to me. That to me should make your kind of like a red flag go off that it's, wow, like this case is how many years old and it's about a plea deal and how he's not telling what happened. That's odd. Love Tina 2010 says, but doesn't even matter because they can't even prove Brian was involved. So tell me how they can hold him. Right. That's why I'm saying I think it has to be some sort of operation. It has to be an operation, or it has to be Brian has to also know what's happening to him. If it's straight up, then Ann Taylor really, really, really missed the ball on an outcry for public help then. Do you know what I mean? You should have been sounding all the alarm bells then if you really believe that they can't even tie him to this and he's going to get put into a murder room where they press a button. Wild West 07. Great question. There's a fascinating gray area too. Some homicides initially investigated as routine can later be reclassified as national security matters once links emerge to federal informants, intelligence operations, or interstate coordination. That's where cases start to get sealed and the public narrative splinters. Okay. Well, what does that sound like? What does that sound like? That sounds exactly like the Idaho 4. There's a fascinating gray area. Some homicides initially investigated as routine are later reclassified, which I actually don't know this off the top of my head. Was the case when it got moved to Ada, was that when it was determined national security? Bill had brought Josh onto his team. Yeah. I mean, Hurwitz also just gives it away. Not Lamey Jamie, top dog. Can we see proof they were actually students? Is there a transcript? I mean, people get upset. I've seen a handful of threads, and I've seen stuff on X. I've seen things on Reddit where they talk about actually, one or two of the girls being police officers, like sophisticated operations, very, very sophisticated operations. Mama Hen 87 _ Nicole says we haven't even seen them take out any bodies. Again, I think that might point to the fact that we'd either see more or less bodies, or we'd see bigger bodies if there were more males in there. I don't know, but I think there's absolutely a reason, because you're in a body bag. You're in a body bag. You don't got to tarp it all over. That's the point of the body bag. So the core question of the PCA is given only the Payne affidavit, what patterns best explain the Idaho 4 homicides and the accused link to Brian Kohberger? The key terms are suspect vehicle 1, which is the white Hyundai Elantra, which is observed near the scene. As we know, that most likely is not a white Hyundai Elantra. Now I want you to act as the world's best defense attorney and give the best strategy on how to completely shred this PCA and prove beyond reasonable doubt it was not the defendant. I mean, these are good cross-examination questions. How many times you handle the snap? Has your lab ever had cross-contamination issues? Is it possible this profile came from casual contact or transfer? Can you place a single phone to a single street address with 100% certainty? How does load on the tower affect which sector a call is recorded to? Have you performed drive tests to replicate the prosecution's path? What margin of error do you assign to the prosecutor's timeline? I'll just say this. What are the top 3 hardest hitting questions that would most likely prove that this was a failed investigation and they got the wrong guy? All right, so these are the 3 questions that it says that it would ask that are the hardest hitting to prove that they might have the wrong guy. The DNA provenance trap. Detective Payne, you swore under oath that the single source of male DNA on the knife sheath came from an unknown individual later linked to the defendant. Can you show the court one documented chain of custody log or photo proving that the sheath was sealed and uncontaminated from the moment it left the crime scene to the time it reached the ISP lab? So the affidavit establishes the sheath as the only physical link to the suspect, but it offers no detailed chain of custody. There's no intermediate handler names. There's no photos proving it was sealed. Any break in that line lets the defense suggest DNA transfer or lab contamination. It's reasonable doubt 101. Okay. Cell phone blackout fallacy. Quote, you wrote that when the defendant's phone stopped reporting to the network between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m., that was consistent with him turning it off to avoid detection. Isn't that also perfectly consistent with a dropped signal, airplane mode, or dead battery, all of which you did not test for or exclude? Well, then I think it's weird they have like third-party people saying they know exactly how he held it off and what battery percentage. But we've had people comment that work in that sector say, yeah, there's no reason for a phone, at least a commercial use phone. Think about how much your battery changes throughout the day. How many times you plug it into a charger, you plug it into your Apple CarPlay. Like, why would it store all of that data? It wouldn't. It's not needed. It's not a function that a commercial phone would need. And then the vehicle identification mirage. Your own FBI forensic examiner first concluded the suspect vehicle was a 2011 to 2013, later expanding it all the way up to 2011, 2016 model. Can you tell this jury what objective marker, whether that be the VIN, the plate, any unique damage, a custom feature, actually ties that white car on grainy video to my client's specific vehicle? So essentially, the evidence chain failure, the inference overreach, and the identification ambiguity. So I'll say this. If you were the defense attorney, what percent would you feel confident that a jury would find reasonable doubt given what you were given in this case? Wow. It says that they give it about a 65 to 75% chance of creating reasonable doubt because the case is circumstantial by architecture. The DNA is the linchpin, but it's scientifically fragile. The digital timeline is speculative. The video and vehicle ID are soft tissue, not bone. The psychological environment of the trial. The bottom line is this affidavit represents the prosecution's best open evidence. The defense can plausibly produce reasonable doubt in about 2/3 of jurors. That translates to about 65 to 75% confidence in avoiding conviction if the trial is well run and discovery doesn't unveil any damning new evidence. But if sealed materials include corroborating forensics, meaning there's residue in the home, there's blood traces in the car, that number would drop fast. Well, there wasn't that. There was not any other evidence. So then what does that percent go to? Damn. It said here that if there was any digital residue in the home, if there's blood trace in the car, etc., that number would go below 40 for reasonable doubt. But I said, well, there's not that. It jumps all the way up if there's truly no additional evidence beyond what's laid out in the Payne affidavit, meaning there's no blood, no fingerprints, no weapon, no eyewitness placing Kohberger inside the house, no unsealed digital or forensic corroboration, then the defense's odds of establishing reasonable doubt climb dramatically. In that case, the realistic defense confidence in acquittal or a hung jury would rise to around 85 to 90%. The rationale behind that number is that the DNA alone can't convict when it's touch, transfer, and contextless. Every other data point is circumstantial and explainable. The standard isn't, quote, maybe, it's beyond reasonable doubt. If there's no corroboration, the narrative collapses. So the defense win probability goes to about 85 to 90%, 70-75% chance of hung jury, 15 to 20% chance of full acquittal. In essence, if this affidavit is the entire case file, the prosecution has built a castle of inference on a single grain of DNA sand. Boom. You don't even need to pay a big-time lawyer. Just get ChatGPT to do it. That's crazy, guys. Oh, well, that's ChatGPT. Yeah, we're being very open about it. Did it sound like it was just spewing bullshit out? Because it sounded pretty accurate. I uploaded the entire actual PDF of the PCA. Where'd that go? LA Mike says, they sit on a throne of sand. Man, well, if that's not the best comment to end the stream on, I don't know what is. Hive, you guys rock. I will be back in the Hive tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central. Please, 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 please hit that like button, press the subscribe button on your way out. And if you're interested in being in the roundtable, birdiebombshell00@gmail.com, subject line roundtable. That is this upcoming Sunday at 7 Central. Cheers, everybody.